Hello everyone, today I'll be doing a short discussion about financial planning and management in education. For our session overview, we will be talking about financial planning process in education, financial management and allocation, financial evaluation and maximization, creating financial network, and accounting and reporting. For our learning objectives, at the end of this session, you should be able to understand the governing basic principles of financial management and operations, describe the process of financial management and allocation, examine financial evaluation and maximization, appreciate the importance of stakeholders in providing support to education, understand the flow of accounting and reporting. So let's talk about first financial planning in education. So I have here three keywords: financial, planning, and education. Financial pertain to monetary receipts and expenditures. It also pertains to relating to money matters, pecuniary. On the other hand, planning is the fundamental management function, which involves deciding beforehand what is to be done, when is it to be done, and how is it to be done. Education herein is the discipline that is concerned with methods of teaching and learning in schools or school-like environments. So if we're going to sum it up all together, financial planning refers to the process by which educational institution decides what it's going to do in the future and how it is going to finance resources required. So basically, the financial plan is a forward-looking. For a country where educational plans remain mainly indicative or not fully comprehensive, the significance of the budget figures is not so important, as the amounts actually budgeted during the plan period do not necessarily correspond to a definite degree to the achievement of the educational target. For example, conversion of targets of the plan into specific projects. In the Philippines, the Department of Education, DepEd, is realigning its budget to fully implement its learning continuity plan for the school year 2020-2021. This is also in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, wherein the budget will be used to print modules. So basically, this example shows the importance of making funds available to support achieving the given targets, specifically in the time of circumstances like health issues that we have. Next will be a proportion of public sources of financing. In 2019, DepEd and the Australian Agency for International Development formally concluded the 6-year Basic Education Sector Transformation, or the BEST program. So in countries like the Philippines, foreign aid contributes a significant share of financing to the educational plan. Under these circumstances, the national budget covers only a fraction of the planned programs. Another is the systems of financing education. In the United States, education finances are decentralized and are coming from federal, state, and local sources. Now, depending on the location, this system generates large funding differences between wealthy and impoverished communities. On the other hand, in countries with a centralized system of financing education, the national budgets, which bear the greater part of the financial burden, should be made more effective instruments for the implementation of educational plans. Let's now talk about financial management and allocation. Governments around the world are nowadays widely perceived to be responsible for ensuring the provision of accessible quality education. This is a recent social achievement. In alignment with the Education 2030 Ancient Declaration and Framework for Action for the Implementation of Sustainable Development Goal number 4, guidelines for the monitoring of national education budgets are driven by the following principles for education finance. First is to increase public funding for education. So it says that the national budget allocation in education should be or should go around 15 to 20% of public expenditure. At the same time, it should be around 4 to 6. It should go around 4 to 6% of gross domestic product. Second is to improve the availability and use of data, improve monitoring, transparency, and use of financing data. This is aggregated by education subsectors, including data on scale and nature of household cost of education. Third is to prioritize those most in need. So the allocation will be used to create access specifically for those marginalized populations, including girls and children affected by conflict. Fourth is to increase efficiency and accountability, existing resources to be used more efficiently through improved governance and accountability. Since 1980s, many school systems have granted school-level professionals greater responsibility for budgetary matters. Today, most education systems lie somewhere on a decentralization continuum, with various decision-making and management functions decentralized to different levels of the government. Decentralized policy decision-making is often driven by the expectations of reduction of cost, improved spending, efficiency, and enhanced accountability to parents and other education stakeholders. Here locally, the Department of Education has a tool called Financial Management Operations Manual, or the FMOM. It is used in all of its financial transactions. It also serves as the governing regulations of the department's budget, accounting, procurement, and asset management. Furthermore, mechanisms through which school funding is governed, distributed, and monitored play a key role in ensuring that resources are directed to where they can make the most difference. Let's see the sample budget allocation for basic education at the school level. So we're going to check the suggested standard use of MOOE, or the school maintenance and other operating expenses. So number one, MOOE is used or should be used to fund activities as identified in the approved School Improvement Plan (SIP) for implementation in the current year and as specifically determined in the annual implementation plan. Next is to finance expenses pertaining to graduation rites, moving up, or closing ceremonies and recognition activities. Number two is actually based on the total budget for that is based on the number of students, graduate students. Number three, MOE should be used to fund supplies, rental, and minor repair of tools and equipment and other consumables for teachers and students deemed necessary in the conduct of classes and learning activities. This also includes school supplies, and any other teaching materials permitted, of course, or I mean included in the APP. Number four, fund minor repairs of facilities, building, and grounds. Maintenance necessary for the upkeep of the school, as defined by Debit Order Number 1, Series 2017, entitled Guidelines on the National Inventory of Debit Public School Buildings for School, year 2016-2017. And last, procures semi-expandable property items worth less than 15,000, including technical, vocational, livelihood, and science classes consumables, as provided in the Government Accounting Manual, issued by the Commission on Audit. So, while the overall level of funding matters, the strategies used to allocate and match resources to learner needs are at least as important. Now let's move on to financial evaluation and maximization. Inefficient use of resources represents a critical financial leakage from the system. In the context of resource scarcity, it is critical to maximize value for money in education investments. Key factors to consider when assessing efficiency include the unit cost of educating a student, essentially total education cost divided by the number of students, as well as process outcomes of repetition rates, class size, and teacher absenteeism. On the other hand, increased budget allocation to the education sector and improvement in system efficiency are only meaningful when they translate into improved results. As such, it is also critical to map whether education spending has achieved its intended objectives and is therefore cost effective. Okay, so to check the effectiveness or examine the effectiveness of education spending, there are some required questions that needs to be answered. Number one, are there any cost effectiveness analysis in the audit reports? Two, are there elements of the budgets that are rated particularly low in their cost effectiveness? 3. Have any program evaluations been conducted? What can be learned from this to improve financial management for the sector? Number 4. How will the results of the budget evaluation report used to ensure improved effectiveness in subsequent budget allocations? How are equitable outcomes for marginalized populations addressed in evaluation? Were any impact evaluations conducted for budget activities? What can we learn from this? Do program budget or impact evaluations suggest a need for improvement? Are there proposals for improvement? So these questions really could determine the effectiveness on the use of education budget. So now let's talk about creating financial network. Stakeholders typically refers to one who is associated with the welfare and success of a school and its students. They may also be collective entities such as local businesses, organizations, committees, media outlets, etc. Studies also confirm that involvement and participation of multiple stakeholders contribute to better management of schools, as according to Bruns, Fulmer, and Patrians 2000. In addition, establishing a good network from the stakeholders could bring a significant proportion on the resources or on the resource envelope. They can in turn support local educational institutions and provide funding to fruitfully deliver quality education. For instance, one of the active non-state non-profit organizations that works to provide all Filipino children with free access to relevant and excellence education is the Teach for the Philippines, TFP. They believe that by working together, education in the Philippines or in the public school system could take advance in the international standard. Last is the accounting and reporting. School financial management comprises the planning and implementation of financial plan, accounting, reporting, and protection of assets from loss, damage, and fraud. All items of financial management are exposed to risk of incorrect, improper, and ineffective school management, which is particularly reflected in the accounting control of an institution. So then, schools must have an accounting rules and instruction on inventory check to diminish the risk of incorrect and ineffective management as well as unintended use of public financial resources. Meanwhile, an educational institution has to report on its work and action to the management or supervising authority, fund provider, founder, and other interest groups. There should also be an annual presentation of accomplishments to gauge the effectiveness and efficiency of the organization as a whole. Finally, schools as public institutions and indirect users of the budget are obliged to organize their management in such a manner that will assure legality, entitlement, and intended purpose of using the funds as well as full and timely collection of revenues and other receipts from the budget within their competence. That would be all. Thank you and have a great day.